really excited for today's edition. We are very lucky to have Nitin Sheth today. So before we get on with the main program, a quick word about BBLF. BBLF is a Bangalore Business Literature Festival. So this Ben Parmanand or Ben conceived this idea of this festival in September 2015, and now BBLF has grown and is going to be in its 10th edition this year. So, along with Ben, there is a distinguished team of authors and editors who joined to make it one of the longest running and most well attended business literature festivals in India. So, as part of this Business Literature Fest, we have every month, or even more frequently, new book, new chat, which is what are some of the most happening books in the market at the time that are relevant to the Indian audiences, and then bring the authors as guests and talk to them. So I'm an industry analyst. That's my day job. I'm also an author, a professor, and a columnist for some newspapers in India and abroad. So I first heard of Nitin when he made headlines. I think this probably was a few years ago. E-commerce was very hot in India. It was hot. And Nitin became the COO of Flipkart. So that was headline news in all of business newspapers in India. So I first heard of Nitin at that point in time. And Nitin also has written a book a few years ago called Winning in the Digital Age. So this won the Best Business Book Award at BBLF a couple of years ago. So then again, I heard of Nitin. So Nitin, welcome to this chat. Really great to have you here.
Thank you, Kashyap, and very nice to connect with you. And thanks for that very nice introduction.
Yep. So though we're not done with the introduction actually. So this is the age of AI, as you say, or ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT, who is Nitin Sheth. So ChatGPT said, okay, I'm going to read what ChatGPT said about Nitin. I think which is reasonably accurate. It said, Nitin is an Indian business executive, author, and entrepreneur known for his work in technology and outsourcing industries. He has held several leadership positions, including currently as the CEO of Incedo, and he was a former COO of Flipkart. He's also an author, and he's held former leadership roles at companies like Fidelity and McKinsey. He's known for his expertise in digital transformation, strategic leadership, and his contributions to the growth of the technology sector in India. I think if I were doing an intro bio for Nitin, I would do the same thing. It also has a section on Nitin is an author. His book, Winning in Digital Age, 7 Building Blocks of a Successful Digital Transformation, provides insights into digital transformation strategy for businesses. So what ChatGPT hasn't done is it hasn't talked about the second book, Mastering the Data Paradox, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So my question to you, Nitin, is tell us a little bit more about yourself, which ChatGPT and the rest of the world doesn't know.
Yeah. See, on facts, that was a excellent summary, I would say, and that's the scary part about ChatGPT today. That I just can't resist a little bit of a point here that when I finished mastering the data paradox last year, I started to prompt ChatGPT with number of chapters, maybe not all of them, but at least 6 7 of them, and then the content that came out was was really made me think a little bit that hey, what exactly is the value addition I'm going to make through my book. But of course, ChatGPT in that case did not have the context and did not have my stories, and in this bio also maybe all the facts are there, but maybe the flavor is maybe a little missing. And I think from a facts perspective, that's very is a fairly accurate summary. I think in terms of a little more of the flavor, I'm somebody who's my passions, or what I'm trying to do in life is to kind of both bring together 21st century business and technology knowledge and expertise, which I think I've been very blessed to have through the education and the career I've had, and also India's deep deep kind of history of wisdom and knowledge. How do we So I'm also deeply influenced by those meditation and kind of India's spiritual traditions, and kind of that's my thing. How do you bring those two things together? Because I strongly believe that the combination of both 21st century technology and India's spiritual wisdom is the path forward for both India's renaissance, but also I think that's for I think a good formula for a better world going forward.
Awesome. So what we're going to hear today is going to be timeless, timeless and modern. So let's get started. So before we get started, for those of you who are joining us live, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in. Either, whether if you're following us on YouTube or if you are following on the StreamYard link, please keep your questions coming and we will get to them. So when I read the book, what really excited me about this book was that I went into it thinking that this is going to be a book on enterprise data transformation. That's what I was hoping to get, or that was what I was expecting to get. But I was really pleasantly very surprised to see that you talk about data not at the enterprise or the organizational level, but also about the individual level and also at the society and the global level. So we will talk about all of that today. So really, but before we get to that, I mean, I showed two of your books. You're a very busy executive. You're traveling all the time. Hmm. That you're a CEO of a thriving company. That's like a full-time job. But you also managed to like publish two books, two bestsellers. That too. So what's your secret? How do you do it?
Kashyap, you are an author, so you know it as well as I do. That
That's
writing,
why I want to know.
it's a very tough. It's a tough business. It needs. I think first and foremost, is just more. I can talk about the idea and the passion I have to contribute back, but more than anything else, I think it's discipline. Because writing is a slog, and the a great journey of many miles is begins with the first step. Um, I think the ability to structure the entire task into manageable bits and then just do it every day. So my second book has been a 3-year effort, and 3 years, 10 to 1 in the night, um,
Wow.
every day that I was not traveling. So that's really been the secret. So there is no fancy secret. So if you look at the introduction to the book, I've acknowledged it to my family, but also to my dog, because he was the only guy who was really with me, when every night I was working on it. He was the guy. So yeah, look, I think it's more than
See
anything.
in the acknowledgements, what's the name of your dog? Because as you say in journalism, get the name of the dog.
His name is Champ. Champ. He's a very,
I didn't read the acknowledgements. You have in the acknowledgements.
yeah.
Come on,
He's
the
a
champ, yeah, real champ.
German Shepherd.
Nice. So discipline and
And I think it's,
planning it out and mapping it.
yeah, because it's I can't get the consultant out of me, so I first write the book in PowerPoint, and then I because it's a process. There's a thought process. I write down the thought process. I then convert that into slides, and which kind of I try to develop the key framework. So again, I can't get the consultant out of me. So if you've seen both of my books, there is a lot of frameworks. So that's how I think. So I first try to develop the core frameworks, and then I have a set of research questions that, okay, this is what I know, this is my hypothesis or assertion, but these are things that I need to research. And then there is the research effort, and then that's you combine the frameworks and research, and that's how the book begins to take shape. So I do think that structuring is a very, very important part of kind of on being able to progress on the task in a structured fashion. Otherwise, if you say, okay, I'm going to start writing, and every day I'm going to write like 3 pages or 5 pages, it doesn't work that way. because
Mhm.
it's kind of like you need a certain direction to your journey. So I think that structure is a very essential part of what enables discipline to kick in.
Awesome. I think I'm making notes here to invite you to do a masterclass on writing at, at our business literature festival. Excellent. I think that's a great advice to all budding or wannabe authors out here. Have a structure, and that things will fall in place. Structure and discipline. Thank you for that. And what's also interesting is like now. So to the before we begin, to the audiences, like what you're really getting is the gist of that 3 years of and burning the midnight oil that Nitin did. The gist of that is love of flavor in this 1 hour session that we have. So look, to set the context, your first book, I think it came out in 21, right? In 2021. Now 3 years have passed. So winning in the digital age to winning the data paradox, mastering the data paradox. So in terms of the external environment, in terms of the business context, what has changed in these 3 years?
Yeah, there has been a acceleration. I think a lot of the fundamentals that I began to talk about in the digital age, I think still hold. Somewhere in our early conversation, you used the word timeless, and I'm very driven by that. That what are secular trends as opposed to just points of time opportunities. So my first book was about more broadly the digital age and what it takes to succeed in it. And now the digital age has progressed a lot into the AI age. Yeah, and I don't see them as distinct. They are a continuum. I would say AI as a subset of digital, but today AI in itself has become such a big deal that I think it is fair to say that we are in the AI age. So to me, just the sheer explosion and kind of the taking of AI from POCs, proof of concepts, into becoming the pivotal technology force shaping work, life, human society, uh, countries, the future of human civilization. I think that's the amazing big shift that's happened in a short period of 3 years. And when I connect the two, that comes to okay, why I wrote this book, it really comes to data, because the explosion of AI has is really about is being enabled by the incredible explosion of data. Yeah. But yes, we over the last 3 years, this trifecta or holy trinity or trimurti, as I call it, of digital, AI, and data, this has really come together as like a supernova. As a supernova, this combination, this trifecta, is simply one of the most potent forces we have seen in the history of the human civilization. We still don't know what to do with it. We still don't know where it will take us. We will do something with it, or it will do something with us. But I think what was maybe a promise 3 years back is certainly now a lot more of a reality. And I think that when I reflect over the last 3 years is simply the biggest shift that has happened. There is nothing which compares.
Very interesting. So, in the introductory part of your book, you invoke Gladwell and Gladwell's definition of the tipping point. You also say that ChatGPT really has been the turning point or the tipping point, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the notion you allude to. So, can you talk about it? What did ChatGPT really change for AI?
Yeah, it's Chat GPT or generative AI. That Look, the AI has existed for a long, long time. And what was analytics, kind of has been morphing into AI for a long period of time. Now, AI was always constrained by data. Yeah, we just talked a little bit about it. So it was not a question of, and I saw it with my clients. As Incedo, we serve some of the largest companies in the world here in the United States, and I saw that AI was not being driven by where was the maximum need. It was being driven by where you had really high quality data. So it's fascinating. you know Data really was a constraining factor, and the depth of and quality of data that is needed for AI versus analytics is a very different level. And I think that's really what was constraining the growth of AI. The compute existed, the algorithms existed. Now, what has happened over the last couple of years is that the foundational models or LLMs, they have reached a tipping point. Okay, they have reached a tipping point, and with the introduction of ChatGPT, what happened was that all the research. It's not just that OpenAI was doing that research. A lot of people were doing that research, but with ChatGPT, they made a B2C, very easy B2C offering out of that. Which a you know just kind of exploded this in the public consciousness. That's the manifestation that has happened. But and then that's really played a very critical role. But at a more fundamental level, what has happened is that what generative AI or foundational models allow you to do is that because they are tapping into the data of the world as opposed to a specific data source, they are able to they are outstanding at problem discovery. So, in any problem solving process, the most difficult part is the first step, which is the problem identification. How do you even get zone it down? And 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 generative AI, just given the way they are built, are able to give you a very good 40 to 60, 70% answer. They don't give the complete answer, but they have helped you get started on almost any problem on earth. Yeah. And once you do that, once you have a starting point, then suddenly there's an unlock. Then you can do more things. Then the more traditional AI that we have been building for 20, 30, 40 years suddenly comes into play. Yeah. So it's kind of like a cricket match, I was at this India Pakistan cricket match, recently, in New York. And there is rain, the openers, they just couldn't weather the storm. No. And if they had weathered the storm, then India could have made a substantial total. It's another thing, Pakistan couldn't even chase that. But you see the point. It's the opening batsman in
The
cricket
platform.
is the is the starting point. If the starting point is there, then the next players can come and really. So that's generative AI. Generative AI gives us a great starting point on any problem, and which was the key challenge in use of AI. And because of that, I think it is a incredible unlock. It is a tipping point. And it's just that we are limited by our own ability to absorb it. And how do we bring different set of technologies, generative AI and more traditional AI and other things together. But make no mistake that this is not a typical hype cycle technology. There is it is very fundamental.
It's not business as usual any longer, I guess. Yeah. So I see we sort of circled around some of these notions in terms of data, etc. So you begin the first section of your book with one of my favorite quotes, which says that water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, like from the ancient mariner, I think. So we used to mug up this quote for quiz questions when we were in school. So suddenly it came back. So similarly, do you think that like that there is a lot of abundance of data? So we're like definitely data rich, but from an actionable insights point of view, we seem to be poor. So are we like data rich but insight poor? And is that really the data paradox, or one of
That,
the
that is
facets of data
that, that's
paradox?
that's the paradox, Kashyap. That's the paradox. That's the central paradox. There are many paradoxes. You know, Data democratization and data security, digital engagement, data privacy. We can go on and on and on. But water everywhere, yet not a drop to drink, is the central paradox. If there was, if just to say, okay, I were to summarize the book in one sentence, it would be that sentence, and that is exactly what you said. That there is a data deluge on one hand, but there is an insights drought on the other hand. Even we extend the water analogy, think about that. You are in the middle of an ocean. There is water all around, but it's salty water. You can't drink it, and you're really thirsty. Your throat is parched, and when you're in the middle of water, you feel even more thirsty, and you can't drink it. That is the situation with data today. There is abundance at one hand, but we are also um, challenged in terms of being able to harness that abundance, and that's where there is a drought. That indeed is the central paradox that I've tried to tackle.
So, I mean, you also say, while talking about the paradox, I think this is again, this caught my eye. I quote from the book, I roughly quote from the book. The inability to manage data well can wreak havoc on our organization. So this I think, can you give some examples of that, and like what do you mean here?
Yeah, I see it every day. I see it in all type of organizations. But the example which is very close to my heart, which I also talk about in the book, is from Flipkart. You know, 2016. When I joined Flipkart, we were, it's to put it kind of, simply, we were in the middle of a massive crisis, existential crisis. Amazon was breathing down on us, and there were a whole lot of problems we had. And internally, our number one problem, we had like kind of a list of priorities, was that our data platform is not working. And that was gridlocking the business. It was very well intentioned of bringing, e-commerce is a very data intensive business, and Flipkart is an amazingly data driven company. Or at least that's the company I knew. And therefore we had tried to bring all types of data together into one platform, and that um, it just didn't work. It's like the Humpty Dumpty phrase, that all the king's men and all the king's horses could not really do anything. And it was really, really genuinely a gridlock. And how do you run such a super data intensive business like Flipkart, if you're not getting anything out of the data platform? And we had probably the best collection of engineers in the country, probably anywhere in the world. We had like X number of IIT gold medalists, a very high number, and like really brilliant people. And we could not solve it as a technology problem. And the way we finally solved it, and we did do that, was by narrowing the problem, saying, okay, let's prioritize. I think there were maybe 6 7 use cases out of the hundreds of use cases, and maybe a more finite number of data pipelines compared to the infinite number of data pipelines we had. Let's just solve for it. Um, and and uh, and once we solve for it, and there is some throughput that started to happen from the platform, then we could do more. Maybe I'm also getting into the solutioning of it, but yeah, just to give you an example that of a gridlock, I can give you another example that is with one of the largest banks in the United States, the largest banks in the world. And we have we were partners with them on a very large, this is just when I was joining Incedo, and we had begun working with them, and massive big um, effort to create kind of one data lake, or one kind of data repository. And multiple years, I think conservatively they would have spent like some um, 300 $400 million. uh,
Mm.
and then one fine day the entire project was shelved, the CIO of responsible and people below that all fired. And just to me it was unbelievable that, and it, well, I could see it. I was probably not, you know I was not that deep into that particular situation to have influenced it completely, but it was a very well-intentioned effort of bringing data together from all parts of the bank, but just didn't work.
So very interesting, because when I think about it, see, there is, like, if you think about what is needed for success, like if it's any technology initiative or anything, we say you need to have top management support, you need to have resources, you need to have, I mean, there is a checklist. And for investments into data, most of them you can probably check off. And I think it's probably 20 years ago, or maybe slightly longer, who said like data science is going to be the sexiest job of this century. So this is not like a new thing in that sense. Like trying to do data better has been, like leverage data better in the organization, has been there for quite some time. So there are investments. Enterprises are making a lot of investments into this thing. So what do you think is, like, what's your diagnosis? Why are there is intent, there is support, there are resources that you mentioned, like there are all these bright engineers. There is also the need, the understanding that they need to get it right. But
Uh,
what's going wrong?
You're absolutely right. See, normally when there is a massive failure, you can say that, hey, oh, this did not have the CEO, support, or the top down mandate, top down direction, and this thing is needed. No, that's not what it is about at all. It is about understanding the nature of the beast.
Mhm.
Yeah. Great civilizations, they died, not, they died because, okay, the river changed its course, or there was a massive famine and you didn't see it. In this case, it's about the nature of data itself, which is the point, that it's a very simple but deep point. It is that any technology investment, can only progress at a certain pace. Yeah. Whereas data is exploding at a pace which is much more than that. Okay.
Mhm.
Let me put things in context. Okay. So over the last 20 years, data has grown by 100 to 150,000 times. 1,000 times. Okay.
Sounds
90
like NVIDIA stock to me.
90% of the data of the world has got generated over the last 2 to 3 years. 90% of the data of the world. So we have 10,000 years of recorded human history, and 90% of the data of the world has got generated over the last 2 to 3 years. So we are talking about something which is unprecedented, Kashyap. It is growing at a phenomenal, crazy pace. It's like this massive deluge or explosion, that whatever may be, however wide you stretch your arms, you will not be able to bring it together. It will overwhelm you. It's like the famous Malthus law, that uh, that resources grow in arithmetic production, and population grows in geometric production. So progression. So you always have a gap. That is the core of it. That's the core of it, that we have tried to solve data as a technology problem. And we are saying that, um, that, okay, let's first bring it together into a single source of truth. Yeah. On that single source of truth, let's build, a customer 360, which will have everything that I need about the customer. Now, on the face of it, these are not these seem logical. And that is what every almost every enterprise that I know of is trying to do. They're first trying to build what they say is the data foundation.
Mhm.
Yeah. On top, which is to bring the data together, which is the single source of truth. On top of the data foundation, they're building some kind of a data platform, which is the customer 360 or other such core models. But when you come to the reality of it, that the bigness of the big data is so big that it is just overwhelming. There are many things, but this is the heart of it. This is the heart of it. The second kind of problem is the in kind of order of magnitude, is the six blind men problem. You know the
Mhm.
six blind men problem, that six blind men with the elephant in the room. And everybody has their own view of what it is, right? And that's also the situation with data. that data is not one thing. If you ask people to describe what's data, what do you mean by it, you will get very different answers. You said data scientist. Yeah, that's just one layer. Okay.
Mhm.
So you have, at the very simplest level, you have the infrastructure. Then from the infrastructure, and that's engineers. Okay. That's engineers. They don't even know the data they are dealing with. Yeah, they're building the or using the infrastructure required to house it. They are, and then on top of that, there is the data itself. Yeah. Customer data, transaction data, so on and so forth. On top of that is the logic layer, which is where data scientists come in, which is where AI comes in, right? And then their thing is a lot about, okay, now what do I get from this data? I'm trying to solve some problems. uh, but really, that in itself is not an outcome. That's also some kind of intermediate step. And then on top of logic,
Mhm.
actions, that from the signals which come through your model, there are some actions that happen. And finally, through those actions, there is a business or a customer outcome. Yeah, so there are these 4 or 5 different layers, and they're very different people. And there is a very limited connectivity across those layers. Yeah, and so I can go on and on, but those, in order of magnitude, the first is the fundamental issue. Okay. And then the, which is the kind of the deluge, and the whole Malthus equation that I talked about. But the second is the six blind men problem.
So, I mean, I think that's fascinating. That raises a few questions. But before, so the question I have is like, I'm like jumping into maybe solutions, but does that suggest that there is a need for like a chief data officer or somebody? Because what you described seems to be requiring orchestrating different pieces of the puzzle. So he is like a solution, somebody who understands this deeply and knows the business, knows the technology, knows what's the art of the possible, and create like a some sort of a digital transformation officer and a chief data officer, chief AI officer. So again, your Trimurti sort of a thing.
See,
Do
it's
it or like.
probably, but I don't see. I think that's a part of the answer. Okay. And
Mhm.
I have seen, earlier, fascination with chief digital officer, and that's morphing into a chief data officer. And we probably that is probably needed. Yeah, or at the least, there is a redefinition, that is needed of the chief data officer role, because in many enterprises, especially financial services, the chief data officer role historically has been a governance role. Yeah, has been about defining, ensuring, kind of data definitions and compliance and data security and things like that. And it's certainly that needs to change. It's not a governance role, or governance is one aspect of it, but fundamentally, the CTO or the CIO, the the person who's, and many organizations have a like a head of data science or whatever, which is one aspect. And then, the business guys, they fundamentally have to come together. Okay, they fundamentally have to come together. Just by appointing a chief data officer, that will not happen, is my submission. Okay. So, there are many things that need to be done, Kashyap, and that's why, um, it's not a silver bullet answer.
So,
And there are, I tried to simplify it, but I still came up with at least 13 things, and that also is not comprehensive. Okay, now, there is a, I call it a unified solution framework, and unified because of exactly the conversation that we just had, that, things need to be connected. But I think there are too many things for one individual to connect. One individual can be an integrator, can be a sutradhar. Yeah. So in that framework, I also talk about two sutradhars. I talk about them in a slightly different fashion. I talk about data quality and data products as the two sutradhars. Yeah, I think the chief data officer is also a sutradhar, but I think we will make a big mistake if we think of, if we think it's a silver bullet kind of a situation. It is not. It's not. It's a lot bigger and complicated than silver bullet solutions, and certainly that silver bullet solution is not just about appointing a chief data officer, though in itself it's probably a helpful thing to do. But uh, if you just do that,
Yes.
and you say, okay, now, or, in Hindi you say baki paap dhul jayenge, right? So
Mhm.
no, that's not going to happen.
Very interesting. I agree. I tend to agree with you. Like there is no silver bullet, one silver bullet that kills it all. So while on the sort of staying in the C-suite itself, so is there a culture or incentives angle itself? Because we've seen this hippo, right? Most decisions or many decisions in many organizations tended to be taken by the highest paid person's opinion. So if somebody you strongly know that because maybe an executive is leaning towards a certain kind of a decision, then you can massage or marshal data to do that. I mean, if you torture data enough, it probably leads to that. So is there some kind of a danger? So is there a burning desire among organizations to be more data driven? So how do you like in essence like square off hippo versus data driven culture?
Yeah, it's see, organizations know that they are data driven, that they have to be data driven, as long as it is not about the most important decisions. So the most important decisions, still end up being taken less based on data, more um, on the gut. And in the book I talk a lot about data versus gut versus wisdom. These are complex topics. um, See, again, it's not that hippo is necessarily, I've kind of caricatured it a bit in the book, but it's not a wrong thing. Yeah, because end of the day, if there is a senior person who has a certain wisdom, that's a good thing, and that wisdom can be
We
very.
won't retain the wisdom of Steve Jobs, for example.
Absolutely, absolutely. The thing is that, when um, it becomes uh, it becomes like a limitation for a data driven culture, because at least my worldview, and where I think, it doesn't have to be my worldview, but where we are going naturally is that with the explosion of there's an explosion of data. Okay, data used to be scarce and used to be a source of power. Data is now abundant. Yeah, so it can't anymore be something you limit to very few people. That calls for data democratization, that you really make it available across the organization, and that kind of then really is lays the foundation for a very different type of organization culture, which is a lot more non-hierarchical, lot participative, which is driven by objective, factors, where people have access to data, which can help drive decisions, as opposed to be, like a 1984 George Orwell thing, that Big Brother is watching and then everything is happening. Yeah. Now, in that, so how do you reconcile the hippo and that? Yeah, because they don't have to be at odds with each other. I think, you- Amazon, there are many good examples there, but Amazon, I think, is a very good example, and I talk about Amazon in the book. That it is certainly led by hippo. There is no doubt about that. That Jeff Bezos is not a, is not a, is a huge personality, and a deeply opinionated and charismatic leader. But I think Amazon has also put a process in place for internal dialogue and kind of internal decision making, which, and for me, they were a competitor while I was at Flipkart, but I always respected and admired, what how they were able to do things, because at Flipkart we were driven a lot by the passion of it, whereas Amazon was this machine that kept on coming at you. um, and it was very interesting. And so they have established a process of making decisions, um, uh, and uh, and which I found very, very interesting. Yeah. And but I think the leader or the hippo also has an important role to play in that. How do you encourage, that data driven conversations? Um, and and often it can be very humbling, even as a leader of my organization, it can be very humbling. And I think one of the key things is humility, that when data shows that you're wrong, you have the humility to acknowledge that. Yeah. So so again, while I kind of make hippo the villain a little bit, but I think that's only to make a strong case for establishing a data driven culture. And to establish a data driven culture, there are the processes. There is making the data available. You say, I want to have a process, but data is not available. How will that happen? And there is also a lot of role modeling by the hippo himself or herself. It's not just one hippo, there are many hippos. So I think all of that goes into it. So establishing that culture, I think, is super essential. But it does not mean that there isn't that role for the role for wisdom.
I hear you. I hear you. I think there are hippos can be goats sometimes, hippos, many hippos. And there is also that notion of data democratization. I think a lot of companies do that, but I think the last mile of empowering, enabling people to act upon the analytics that they're seeing or data that they're seeing. And that I think
I think technology
very,
is also enabling that, Kashyap. The growth of self-service tools, the the capability of those self-service tools. So it's not just about information, but also about a lot of analysis. What if, Chat GPT itself, you started the conversation with Chat GPT, generative AI, as a way of taking that whole self-service philosophy to a completely different level. The last mile issue you talked about, I think that's where technology, I think, is really, really can play a very, very positive role.
absolutely. So far, I mean, I think just to shift gears slightly a bit. So there are inherently a lot of difficulties for organizations to leverage data. I mean, you will hit the holy grail or there's a pot of gold if you do it right, but it seems to require a lot of resources, etc. So where does that leave the small and medium businesses? Like, do they how do they approach becoming data driven?
See, it is uh, it is an absolute myth. Absolute It's absolutely incorrect, that this whole data thing is for large enterprises, or it's kind of like a big tech, big organizations. I'm all, often asked this question, that is this kind of data and AI explosion, it is going to increase the gap between haves and have nots, and in this case the technology haves and technology have nots. And I look, this is completely incorrect. It is completely incorrect. The world of technology, the world of the digital and data, by its very nature, are about democratization. I make a very important statement. Digital and data, by its very nature, are about democratization. It is about making it available very, very broadly, because we just talked about it. We are moving from scarcity to abundance. It cannot be tied at all. Yeah. So I always give this example that now, we have, a child in Navsari in Gujarat, or Guntur in Andhra Pradesh, or Jeend in Haryana, who has access to Harvard Business School content. So, what's the, so it's the greatest demo, democratization that I think is happening in history. Okay. Now, if you chose to, there are certain ways you access it. If you chose to ignore it, then God save you. Okay. But look, that's this essential nature. As far as small enterprises and data is concerned, what we should share with the audience is that, see, most of the data today is open source,
Mhm.
is available. Okay. I kind of make a distinction about proprietary data, something, which is extremely, is about you, and it's kind of like the pinch of salt in a bowl of dal. But you know, that's the 1% or less than 1%, which is truly proprietary. Most of it is today available. It is, it is there on google.com, chat gpt. When I started my career with McKinsey in 96 to do a simple market sizing, I still can't forget it. There was there was this tractor market sizing study for Brazil, and like a four-member team went to Brazil for 3-4 months just to do a tractor market sizing. I was not part of that team, so I always used to like say, okay, what, that was such a cool project and that I should have been on. And today it's kind of like, that data, you can type it on google.com and you will get a lot of that data in like 5 seconds. You see the point I'm making. Yeah. And you don't have to be uh, like a mega John Deere or Mahindra to be commissioning that study. You could be whoever, you could, and you can be accessing that data. Yeah. So I think it gets down a lot more to um, data literacy, understanding the power of data, making it your friend, not as something which is this very complex technical topic. And that's also in a sense my one of my main objectives with this book, Kashyap, that I want to humanize data. I want to almost
Mhm.
romanticize data, so it becomes like something which the I don't want this phrase to be taken in any political context, but the aam admi, the common man can, it can, they can become comfortable with it because they have to become comfortable with it. And that common man is both the individual but also the business. Today, I very
Mhm.
strongly believe that it is easier for a small business to compete because there is so much change happening. Even the larger enterprise, big is not always good, big is not always beautiful. There
Mhm.
is so many changes happening in terms of a technology stack. We are in a world, even 10 years back it was about building technology is very expensive. Today we are in a world of SaaS, which is about consuming technology. You're a small guy, you can, who has asked you to build a full stack here? You go and buy a SaaS platform, pay as you go, and a lot of the data is available, is open source, available for anybody, free. But at least have now the thought process, the mindset, and the skills to use it. So I actually feel it's a huge positive for the small guy. But yes, they do need to have the skills and the mindsets to use it.
Absolutely. I think you're quite passionate that digital and data level the playing field for
Absolutely.
companies of all sizes to play.
Absolutely.
I
And
mean,
for us in India, we have to use that, because for us, that you know we are coming, that common man or the small business is coming from a relatively, data scarce, technology scare, it's not a lot of science, and I think all of that is a huge opportunity for us.
awesome, got it. Yeah. No, I'm actually going to speak on AI for small businesses in a couple of days. So I'm going to steal some of your ideas out here from the book as well. Yeah. So, moving beyond business, I think we spent quite a bit of time, and I think you made the point of the paradox quite evident. Beyond businesses, how do data paradoxes operate at the society level, and how do we deal with? Can you talk a little bit about that? This is a question from Ben. Thank you, Ben, for that.
Yeah, that's see, data is not just about enterprise, at all. It is at all levels, individual, society. There are so many things I can be talking about. So one of the huge positives of data from a society or a global perspective is the opportunity with data collaboration to solve some of the biggest problems that we face as humanity. And this is not theory. This is, we saw that with COVID. That we could not have had the speed at which there was a response, and you know and drugs were created, could not have happened without global data collaboration. That's a great example. The genetic research that is it's while we talk about data and AI, the other very big frontier is the gene, and there is tremendous amount of research happening across the world, and there's a lot of collaboration in that. Yeah. So data collaboration can be such a power for good, but with that there is also a risk of data colonization. Yeah. That it's kind of like the small business thing that we spoke about, that it's actually a huge opportunity, but if you're unaware, yeah, then you can be taken advantage of. And that's also the case with, there are going to be countries that are going to be data rich, and there are countries that are technology rich. Yeah. And that it's so true in the field of healthcare, and that's one of the biggest areas for application of data. That let's say a country like India is producing all the data, and but we just let it go. Yeah, it's kind of like the crown jewels. So that's kind of like a paradox, no? Or equally you can say, you know data as a source of competitive advantage, as a national competitive advantage. um, like for example, in India, we have created the Aadhaar stack, and we have had the UID, and we brought, you know it's a tremendous resource. It's a tremendous data resource which has helped build kind of the digital payment capability and all of that, right? It could not have happened without that data. I think it's a competitive advantage. So that collaboration versus colonization, or collaboration versus winning, or competitive advantage, I think is probably one of the more significant paradoxes to be thinking about.
I think this notion of data colonialism is quite interesting, and I think policymakers and companies should be paying a lot more attention to it, and societies as such. Because I do believe that data is definitely going to be part of the commons, digital commons, like some of the things that you mentioned, the infrastructure stacks, the APIs that we have. They're definitely going to be part of the commons, and they should be guarded and enriched for the welfare of everybody.
And
And
it's also and
so,
it's a paradox then to be solved, no? Because if you start obsessing about it, you will not collaborate. Yeah. So, and that's where mastering the paradox comes in, because you want to collaborate, but you also want to collaborate in a way that's fair and equitable.
so from a to a micro perspective, go from like the global at a society level to an individual level. Is there like a paradox operating? Like as a company, let us say I become very good at knowing everything that is there to know about my customers or potential customers. So are there some dark patterns that can be emerged? Like we see this in the case of social media, for instance. There is talk of digital detox. I think you talk about it in your book. Hmm. Are there any dark patterns?
Yeah,
Like from
there
an
is,
individual point of view, like how do you guard yourself? How do you?
I think, yeah, there is absolutely a dark side of data. We spoke about that for enterprises, and we spoke about the Flipkart example, and I think it is equally true for individuals. And I think there are two or three key issues. One is just about digital addiction. That one is that, of course, digital engagement is a huge opportunity and a huge personal need. We are all into it, whether it is entertainment or e-commerce or whatever. But if it is unchecked, it can also go lapse into addiction. And we know it well that mental health is the biggest epidemic that we as humanity face, and this addiction. And again, it's very difficult to disaggregate between digital data and AI here. Yeah, I would say this as the trifecta. The trifecta addiction. Yeah. Is kind of one thing. The other is about privacy, that compromising your privacy, because it's again a paradox, that to get benefit from anything digital, you have to share your data. Yeah. But the moment you do that, there is also a risk of compromising your privacy and that being misused. Yeah. So I have I have a social media profile, especially on LinkedIn or Facebook. I use it actively because for me it's a way of communicating, it's a way of engaging. uh, but at the same time, there is a risk around that you also expose yourself more, and somebody who wants to attack you also just gives a lot more information to them. So digital addiction and compromising your privacy are two very significant problems. And I think, to my mind, the they're almost as big as the advantages. So and privacy in particular,
Hmm.
I make an argument in the book. It's such a big issue that it can't just be left to an individual to say that, oh, to use this, you sign this consent form. Arey Baba, whoever reads that or whoever can understand it? So there has to be some common minimum global standards around privacy. When you use any medical equipment, there is a certain minimum standard. There is, you use a car, there is a minimum standard. And on data privacy, there have to be common global standards. Some jurisdictions may have more, but at least you need to have something common. Otherwise, we will, the dark side will keep on becoming darker and kind of more dangerous.
The states have to step up. Yeah, I mean, I think that this illustrates that a key 21st century skill is really digital and data literacy, not just for corporate leaders, but for everybody. So, other than, of course, getting a copy of this, what is your advice for becoming more data literate
See, I think
at
it's
an individual common person level, aam
see,
aadmi level?
yeah, I think it's to kind of get this fear away, that this is some very complex technical topic. I'm sorry, I could not write this book. You said that you write thinner, simpler books. I wish I could have done that, and maybe I should still do it. Yeah, that this is still, my intent with writing this book was that, to make it simple. It is, it may seem complex, but it's a lot of common sense. You go through it in a logical fashion, anybody can engage in it. It's not so I think with technology has been sold over the last many decades by creating this almost black magic around it, that this is some magic. And AI is being sold like that, that it is magic. No, Are Baba, it's no magic. Okay, you have to make it your friend. Yeah, you have to make it your friend. You have to humanize it. And look, this book is an attempt towards that. Many things have to be done, but I think that's the core of it. How do you humanize these topics? How do you make a fear of this being some kind of a complex black magic, take that away? Yeah, because these are not that. This is technology today, is about consumption. It's designed for consumption, and we have to make millions and millions of people very comfortable with that notion.
This would like take that fear away. That's the first step. So I think we're almost out of time, but I think one really fascinating thing that I found, which is on like page 406, which is about we talk about the role of wisdom in a data first world. So can you sort of summarize that? I think it's a timeless topic.
Yeah, see, wisdom is really about deep pattern recognition. Yeah, so I take this example that you know like last year we had the Silicon Valley Bank disaster. It was not an ethical disaster in that sense, and it was really about decision making. And you just imagine that you know all the analysts in the world were there, no, and they still ended up making bad decisions. And see, because when you're using data for decision making, it is also in a certain context. even defining what decision you're making or what problem you're looking to solve, itself, needs, that's where the human ability really comes in, and that's really where wisdom comes in. Because even the way you're defining problems comes from a certain depth of your thinking through. You're having seen many situations. Based on those situations, there is a pattern which helps you kind of look at things deeply. Yeah. And what is happening, Kashyap, is that in the Twitter kind of world, our we are all kind of conditioned by micro, our learning is very micro insights, tweet level. So which is not enabling that process of absorbing, of reflecting, of processing, which are the fundamental methods by which you develop wisdom. Yeah. And we talked about dark side, and I think that's also like a dark side issue, that there is such a addiction on data and data driven decision making, that you lose out on wisdom, which will be which will really, it is not AI which will lead to a fall of the human civilization, but it is that which will lead to a fall of the human civilization. And so I make a fairly passionate plea in the book, about the role of wisdom. And while I've written like a 500-page book about saying data is like, the hero, heroine, guru, everything, but at the same time, the role of wisdom is extremely important, and I actually don't see them as opposite to each other. I see data as feeding into wisdom, but it's a innately human capability. And we should also recognize that in the digital and data and AI age, there are a lot of headwinds in terms of the natural processes of developing wisdom, and therefore a more conscious effort needs to be done in that direction.
Absolutely. I think let me very inelegantly summarize that as don't lose sight of the woods for the, what is it? Don't lose sight of the forest for the trees.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes,
Yep,
exactly.
yep. So that is the thing. So I think that's a great note to conclude on. But I have one last question, which is really around. So you talk about the trifecta, which is the digital, data, and AI. So you've already written books about digital and data. So are we, can we expect like a book on, is the trifecta of books going to be next about the AI paradox or something about AI?
Yeah, it's this is a book about AI as much as it is a book about data. I don't, I don't know if I can segregate them. To me, it is more of an evolution from digital to data and AI. Um, I think in the first two books, while I've, I think, talked more about enterprise, business and technology. I've tried to bring other aspects in, humanize them, both the topics to the extent possible, but still I would say the center of gravity has been intersection of business and technology. And it is very clear to me that going forward, the key bottleneck or the enabler really has to be more about the organization and the human aspects. Because it is very clear to me that over the next 3 4 years, every job in the world will get affected. Yeah, including the conversation we are having. Yeah. Now, how that will happen, and what are going to be the uniquely human um, capabilities, and so what is it that we should focus on, uh, individually and then collectively as an organization. I think those are aspects which to me are the much bigger aspects. And I'm already working on my third book and the fourth book. Third, I've already made quite a bit of progress, but I think I'm going to evolve from business and technology, which will still be, I think, the context of what I'm writing, to a lot more about the human implications.
Awesome. We look forward to that. On that note, while we have, we are yet to see while we're about to see, can you say it like, yep. While we're waiting for Nitin's next, you can get a copy of Mastering the Data Paradox, published by Penguin and available at both Flipkart and Amazon, all your favorite bookstores. So thank you very much. And one last plug, which is the 10th edition of the BBLF, Bangalore Business Literature Festival, is happening on 14th September. So it's a cool, pretty cool festival. So those of you who are listening, please do join us there. So thank you so much. I think it's been fascinating.
Thank you, Kashyap. Thanks for a brilliant conversation. It was worthwhile waking up at 4 a.m. here in Seattle to have this chat with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.